What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here, back with another Week 8 college football preview, and we have one of the best rivalries in the country this Saturday night when the USC Trojans make their way into South Bend to take on the number 13 ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish in one of the more storied matchups in college football today. Right now, Notre Dame is a 7-point favorite over the Trojans in a game that kicks off live on NBC, 6:30 p.m. Central Time. And as storied and competitive as this matchup is, these two teams enter this game in two very different places. You got Notre Dame on the verge of fighting their way back into the top 10, while you have the Trojans looking just to stay above 500 with an interim head coach after a very tumultuous 2021 season, looking to use this win to maybe spark a late Pac-12 run to end their season and salvage what they can. But looking at the storylines for these teams, the Fighting Irish enter off a much-needed bye week as they were banged up at multiple important positions, missing many key players. But now they're rested. A lot of these guys are going to be back this weekend. So now the Irish are loaded up for a huge run late in the season for a possible New Year's Six Bowl appearance and or a long shot playoff chance where they maybe can enter themselves in the discussion based on all the chaos that we've already seen this season, as their only loss is to number 2 ranked Cincinnati in South Bend just a few weeks ago. But Brian Kelly's team can never be counted out. So look for the Fighting Irish to be extremely motivated as they enter this very, very important game against the Trojans. Now, on the other sideline, USC enters this matchup also off a bye week, also much needed, especially when you look at what a crazy season it's been for them after the firing of Clay Helton. They've went 2-2 since that move was made, but a win this weekend could be very interesting and possibly spark that Pac-12 run that can really improve that bowl game standing for USC. And if the Pac-12 chaos, which we've seen it strike year after year, does happen, the USC can find themselves sneaking into the Pac-12 championship game, and really try to rebound from last year losing that game to Oregon in the Pac-12 championship. So both these teams are going to come in motivated, chip on their shoulder with a lot to play for. But this storied matchup dates back to 1926, guys. The Fighting Irish lead this series 47-36 with 5 ties. And right now, the Fighting Irish are on a 3-game win streak. But with a rivalry game, you could throw the records out the window. Each team has been dominant in certain eras, and this one is one of the most competitive rivalries in the country. So expect everything and anything this weekend when these two teams match up. But moving forward to the keys of the games, we've set the stage with the storylines. We got to figure out what do these teams need to do to get a win this weekend. So for the Fighting Irish, it really lies in being balanced in their offensive attack this weekend. It's been the number one thing that's been missing from this team this year compared to the college football run they made with the 2020 team. Yes, the passing game is working with Cohen and that stable of quarterbacks that has been rotating in and out this year at times, but the run game has really been missing as Kyron Williams has not been able to replicate the success that we saw the Fighting Irish have on the ground last year. You look at this running attack. Let's just start there. They've really struggled. Less than 100 yards rushing per game right now, and less than 3 yards per carry for the season. The offensive line is not dominating the line of scrimmage this year, and Kyron Williams is not being able to be that explosive running back that we saw last season for this Notre Dame team. He's rushed for 363 on the ground, less than 4 yards per carry, and 4 rushing touchdowns. Now, a key piece that was missing against Virginia Tech was Chris Tyree, the backup running back, 112 yards and a touchdown. Also, huge kick return in that game against Wisconsin. But he was held out of Virginia Tech with turf toe, and Brian Kelly said that Tyree has been cleared for this weekend and will officially be back in the rotation this weekend for the Fighting Irish. So that'll be a huge addition to help Kyron Williams out with this rushing attack. But USC is allowing almost 150 yards on the ground right now and almost 2 touchdowns per game. If there's a game Notre Dame should be able to get this rushing attack working, it should be this weekend against USC. So that's why being balanced is the key, because they have a great chance of trying to establish something on the ground to help out these quarterbacks. Now, the quarterback situation in South Bend has been a wild storyline all season long. We've seen Jack Cohen, Tyler Buckner, Drew Payne. All these guys have seen action this season, including Cohen last week starting, being replaced by Buckner, Cohen being put back in against Virginia Tech. But Cohen this weekend should be the first guy on the field. Kelly said that he's the guy they feel most comfortable, gives them a chance to win. Jack Cohen over 1,200 yards passing, over 61% completion percentage, 10 touchdowns and 3 picks, while Buckner only has 191 yards to the air, 2 touchdowns and 3 picks with less than a 46% completion percentage, which is not great. So Cohen is definitely the better option right now. But luckily, Cohen this weekend should have some chances against this USC secondary that does have some weaknesses on the back end. He has to continue being efficient over the middle with his intermediate passing game, though. That's where he has an 85 PFF passing grade, Pro Football Focus passing grade this season, his highest average of the season. And on top of that, avoiding turnovers is key. When this Notre Dame offense protects the ball, that's when this team it really makes an impact because their defense is good enough to get some stops as long as you're not giving teams favorable field position. That was the number one thing against Cincinnati that really cost them that game, was the turnover battle, throwing a pick in the red zone to Ahmad Garner and then really stalling out their drives. This USC offense is too good to give extra possessions in favorable field position because you look at what the Irish do, they have to move the ball, and Cohen needs to distribute and play within the offense. Because if you give Keaton Slovis short fields all game long, USC is going to get a big upset in South Bend. So Cohen has to play within himself, be efficient, and don't turn the ball over and let his playmakers go make plays for him. That's the key for Notre Dame. Now, for USC, the key really starts and ends with this passing game. That has been the focal point of this team. And Keaton Slovis averaging over 315 yards per game this season with over 2 touchdowns per game has been the focal point himself. He's been the face of this offense for over 2 years now. And when this passing game is clicking, this USC offense is taken to another level. So it's going to be the key for USC this weekend. And Slovis coming into the season with all the hype as a potential Heisman candidate, a potential first-round draft pick. This season, he's had to face the most adversity that he's faced yet, getting benched one game for Jackson Dart. He gets hurt, gets thrown back in the lineup. So this game could go a long way in determining whether Keaton Slovis can salvage this season along with this program. He's only completing about 64% of his passes, over 1,500 yards, 9 passing touchdowns, but has 5 interceptions. But Slovis still ranks second in passing yards in the Pac-12, fourth in passing touchdowns, and fourth in pass completion percentage. So he's still producing at a high level, even if it may be one of his down years up to this point. But you look at what he's done off of play action, though. That's where I want to work. That's where I want to go with this. Slovis off the play action, his passing grade jumps all the way to a 90.6 compared to a 75 not working off the play action. When this offense can get that running game going and Slovis can work off of it. Off the play action, he's completing over 76% of his passes, 4 touchdowns, no picks, and 6 big-time throws this season. They don't run the play action often, but when they can, when it's working, USC becomes a different offense and really can make some moves down the field. Now, the Trojans have really relied on one of the best wide receivers in the country. It all starts with Drake London, who has over 60 catches already this season, over 800 yards, 5 receiving touchdowns, and it shows you how big of a focal point he is, where the next highest receiver in this offense only has 22 catches. London has one of the highest receiving grades in the country with over a 90, and that's easily one of the highest in the Pac-12 and definitely the country. So Drake London is going to be an X factor for this passing attack. But then you also got Taj Washington, 22 catches, 277 yards and a touchdown. Gary Bryant, almost 200 yards receiving, 3 touchdowns. And then Keontae Ingram and Malape at running back both have combined for over 22 catches alone too. So watching them out the backfield is going to be key for Notre Dame this weekend. But when you look at that running game with Ingram and Malapay against this Notre Dame rushing defense, allowing over 120 yards per game, they're going to help Slovis establish the play action and give him some favorable matchups down the field against a very talented secondary headed by Kyle Hamilton at safety, who I think is probably the best safety in college football right now. But Ingram has rushed for over 400 yards, 3 touchdowns, while Malapay has rushed for over 202 touchdowns. They're going to have to try to find room against a very talented front for Notre Dame. And that's why moving to my matchup to watch, it's going to have to be the USC offensive line against a very talented Notre Dame defensive line because, yes, the Trojans O-line has been one of their strong points this year, which a lot of people didn't think it would be, losing some of the talent they have over the past few years. But they've been great in establishing the run game and protecting Slovis this year. But this is going to be their biggest test against this Notre Dame defensive line. You look at the O-line for the Trojans, they've played extremely well. Only 5 sacks allowed in only 54 pressures over the first 6 games of the season. They're going to have to try to replicate that this weekend. But the interior is where they thrive. That's going to be something to watch this weekend. Brett Neilon at center, Andrew Voorhees at guard, and Liam Jimmons at offensive guard have not allowed a sack this season and have only allowed 13 combined pressures this year for the Trojans in 6 games. These 3 guys are absolutely dominating on the inside of this offensive line. The reason this matters, Slovis is a different quarterback when he's under pressure, and that's why this offensive line matters. Under pressure, Slovis is only completing 30% of his passes for 3.2 yards per attempt, no touchdowns, and 2 picks with under a 40 Pro Football Focus passing grade. Slovis has to be comfortable in the pocket. Luckily, this offensive line has only allowed him to be pressured on about 25% of his dropbacks, only 1 out of 4. So this Notre Dame team has to try to increase that, get Keaton off his spot, and make him feel uncomfortable in the pocket. And that's going to be a huge key when you have a playmaker like Hamilton on the back end who will get some interceptions if you put balls in the wrong place against the secondary. Now, the front 7 for Notre Dame has also played extremely well. 19 sacks, over 90 quarterback hurries this season, and they're going to aim to get Slovis uncomfortable on Saturday night. And it all starts with Isaiah Foskey at DN off the edge, who leads the Irish in sacks this season with 6 sacks already and 10 quarterback hurries. He has the highest pass rush grade of any defensive lineman for the Fighting Irish. But then you also can't forget the other guys on that defensive line in Myron Tagovailoa, Amosa at DN, Kurt Heinisch at nose guard, and also Jason Ademaloa at defensive tackle. These guys have combined for 6 sacks as well, and over 40 combined quarterback hurries led by Tagovailoa, Amosa at defensive end on the other side of Foskey. These DNs are legit. The weakness of the USC offensive line is that tackle spot. If Notre Dame can take advantage of that, the Fighting Irish have a very good chance to get the big win this weekend. But looking at this game as a whole, at one point, I would have thought USC could have pulled this one out, but right now, I think Jack Cohen's going to have a very good game this weekend against the USC defense that is not spectacular. It's about time. It feels like a levee about to explode. Kyron Williams is due for an explosive performance. I think Kyron Williams finally breaks out this game, but I do think Drake London and Keaton Slovis keep it close early. This is going to be a high-scoring game, in my opinion, even with how good the Notre Dame defense can be. I have Notre Dame pulling this one out 40-30 over USC this weekend in South Bend. So a 10-point win for the Fighting Irish, 40-30. Guys, if you are new, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and go ahead and like the video, man. We got daily college football content, game previews, everything right here on the Bluebloods. I want y'all to comment y'all scores below, comment your takeaways of the game and what you're going to be looking for. What are your thoughts on it? I'd love to interact with y'all in the comments, but go ahead and subscribe. But guys, we will have another preview this afternoon coming at y'all. Iowa State, Oklahoma State this afternoon. We'll be breaking down one of the biggest Big 12 matchups of the week. But for right now, guys, the Blue Bloods are out.